Okay, so you know how the digital world can seem super glamorous?
Oh, yeah.
Like everyone's winning and living the dream.
Right.
But lately there's been some uh, pretty serious drama surrounding the Zeus Network,
Oh, yeah, this one's got everyone talking.
for sure. And it all seems to boil down to disagreements over who really built the network and whether the money's actually been flowing where it should.
Yeah, some major accusations are flying
So
around
we're going to take a deep dive into this whole thing today
also.
to try and figure out what's really going on behind the scenes.
I love it.
So for this one, you flagged some super interesting stuff.
I did.
We've got a transcript of a YouTube video from this channel called Sweet Ma for Life, where they're reacting to the whole controversy.
Right.
They actually share statements directly from Amanda Cerny and Lemie Plumber.
Yeah, Lemie.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone knows him as Lemie.
And we've also got this other transcript of a really detailed account from Destorm.
Yeah, he gives his whole perspective on how Zeus got started and all the problems that have come up since.
Okay, so basically our mission today is to try and understand these different sides of the Zeus Network story.
Yeah, exactly. Like when we see a successful platform like this, how often do we actually know the full story of where it came from?
Right, like all the relationships and the promises that were made behind the scenes.
Exactly.
Okay, so this whole thing really blew up publicly with a tweet from Amanda Cerny back in March.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
She basically said straight up that she's a co-owner of Zeus, but hasn't received any income from it since it started back in 2018.
Whoa, that's a pretty big statement considering how long Zeus has been around.
Yeah, it is. And Lemmie's response was, well, pretty direct.
How so?
He called her a fraud, accused her of lying, and said that he was the sole creator, investor, founder, and CEO.
Oh, wow. So he basically shut down her claims completely,
Yeah, basically a very public and very firm denial.
which usually means there's something more going on under the surface.
Totally. And that's kind of what prompted Destorm to come forward with his side of the story.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
So this is where things get really interesting. Okay, I'm all ears.
So Destorm says he got a call from a mutual friend about this idea that Lemie had. The idea was basically for a black Netflix for influencers, which they were calling the social network.
Interesting. So it wasn't just Lemmie's idea from the start?
No, it sounds like there was at least some initial collaboration on this vision.
Yeah, like they were targeting a specific niche within the whole influencer world.
Right. And that's where Destorm comes in.
Okay.
He says they brought him in as a partner and offered him a significant amount of equity in the company.
Gotcha.
And this was largely because of how successful his C-series was at the time.
Ah, so he wasn't just any influencer. He had a proven track record.
Exactly. He mentions it had over 500 million views and even got recognized by the Emmys.
Wow, yeah, so he was bringing a huge audience to the table.
Right. And that equity they offered him basically represents a share of ownership in the Zeus network,
Right.
which means he would be entitled to a portion of any future profits or the value of the company if it were ever sold.
Okay, that makes sense. So then he says he was actually instrumental in bringing in other partners too, like King Bach and Amanda Cerny.
Oh, wow. So this is already painting a different picture than Lemmie's claim of being the sole founder.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And according to Destorm, the initial agreement was that all four of them would be equal equity co-founders.
Wow. So Destorm, King Bach, Amanda, and Lemie, all with equal ownership.
Yep. And Lemmie's role was supposed to be more behind the scenes as the CEO.
Okay, so he'd be handling the business and finances while the influencers were the public faces.
Exactly. And Destorm says he was supposed to be the president of the network too.
Gotcha. So he'd have a pretty active role.
Oh, yeah.
So how did they even come up with the name Zeus Network?
Well, this is kind of funny.
Okay.
Destorm says he actually came up with the name.
Oh, wow.
He was inspired by Greek mythology. And he thought, like, if Nike could use a Greek god's name and be successful, why not them?
Right. Makes sense.
And apparently Amanda just happened to mention that she had a dog named Zeus.
What a coincidence.
Yeah, and that kind of sealed the deal.
That's wild. It wasn't some big marketing strategy. It just kind of happened organically.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of
Wow.
funny to think about.
It is.
But this is where Destorm's account takes a turn.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he starts talking about broken promises and financial issues.
Uh-oh.
He claims that Lemie promised to fund the first round of content creation.
Okay.
And while Destorm, King Bach, and Amanda were all out there promoting the platform and making content for the launch,
Right.
things apparently started to go south pretty quickly.
Yikes. So the promised funding didn't really come through.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
And that obviously puts a huge strain on everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like you need that money to pay creators and actually get the content made.
Exactly.
Mm.
And this is where it gets even worse.
Oh, no.
Destorm says he actually secured Snoop Dogg for his series Caught
Wow.
and brought in around 25 other creators.
That's a lot.
Yeah, and he says he did all of this based on Lemie's promise that these creators would get a percentage of the subscription revenue.
Right, the standard deal.
Yeah, but according to Destorm, none of those creators ever saw a dime.
What? That's a huge breach of trust.
Yeah, not just with the initial partners, but with the entire creator community they were trying to build.
Right, it makes you wonder about Lemmie's whole approach to business.
Totally. And then Destorm drops this bomb.
Okay.
He says, right before the launch, Lemie called him and said the whole network was about to go under because he was out of money.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so Destorm says he went into the office that summer and edited 4 series for Zeus himself.
No way.
Yeah, and get this, he says he put in $135,000 of his own money.
What?
To cover the production costs for shows like Bad Escorts, Season 2 of Caught, and a bunch of other stuff.
Wait, so he became an investor to save the network?
That's what he's saying. And he's really clear that he wasn't contractually obligated to do any of that.
Wow. This is a huge turning point in the story.
It is, and it gets even crazier.
Seriously.
So apparently there was no budget left for music for any of the shows. So Destorm says he called in a favor from Tommy Brown and Franks, who are these amazing music producers.
I know their work. They're incredible.
Yeah. They provided over 1,000 beats for the network, with the understanding that they'd get paid once Zeus became profitable.
Okay, standard deal.
But guess what?
They never got paid.
Exactly.
This is getting really bad.
It is, and it just keeps going.
Oh, God.
Destorm also says he was the one who secured the partnership with SAG-AFTR.
Oh, wow. That's a big deal for a digital platform.
Yeah, I meant a lot of the creators and actors on Zeus could get their SAG cards.
That adds a lot of legitimacy and recognition.
Right. And Destorm says Lemie later went against SAG-AFTRA's interests, but we don't really have the details on that.
Huh. Interesting.
Okay, so now we get to the actual launch of the network.
Okay.
And apparently it was a disaster.
What happened?
Destorm says their original tech partner warned Lemie about potential glitches.
Oh, no.
But they went ahead with this big launch party anyway.
Okay.
And on launch day, over 45,000 people signed up.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, but the next day they found out there was a system error, and everyone had been given free access.
Oh, God.
So they had to remove all those initial subscribers and ask them to resubscribe with a paid membership.
That's brutal.
Yeah, imagine you sign up for this exciting new platform, get all this free content,
Right.
and then the next day you're told you got to pay up.
Yeah, no one's going to be happy about that.
Exactly. So the launch was basically a huge flop.
Ouch. That kind of technical failure can really kill momentum.
It can.
Yeah.
And this is where King Bach steps in.
Okay.
He managed to bring in this silent investor named Ben Q for a second round of funding.
Ah, so they got a lifeline.
They did. And with that new money, they shifted their strategy to longer form content with bigger influencers.
Okay, that makes sense.
Like Amanda secured Black China.
Oh, wow.
Bach brought in B. Simone.
Gotcha.
Destorm brought in Queen Naija.
And Lemie.
Lemie got Michael Blackson.
Okay, so they went all in on these big names.
Yeah, and Destorm believes those shows are what really got the network to take off.
Yeah, it seems like they were able to adapt and pivot, which is crucial in the digital world.
Totally. But now we get to the falling out.
Uh-oh.
Destorm claims that once Zeus started making money,
Right.
Lemie basically took over the finances and pushed out the original partners.
Wow, so Destorm, King Bach, and Amanda.
Yep. He says Lemie started doing interviews and acting like he was the only reason the network was successful.
Oh, so taking all the credit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And here's the big accusation.
Okay.
Destorm says Lemie never paid the partners their share of the profits.
Are you serious?
Dead serious.
Sure.
He even claims that K1 tax documents
Oh, wow.
show that the original partners earned millions of dollars from Zeus but never actually received the money.
Whoa, wait, hold on. K1 forms are used to report a partner's share of income and losses and deductions?
Exactly.
So if those documents are showing millions in earnings,
Right.
that means there's a huge disconnect between what was reported and what was actually paid out.
Exactly. And Destorm goes on to describe Lemie living this lavish lifestyle, traveling to Paris with security designer clothes, multiple homes, RVs, gifting cars, and jewelry.
Wow.
While the partners, who he says were crucial to building the network,
Right.
saw none of the financial benefits.
That's a pretty stark contrast.
It is. And Destorm mentions discovering that Zeus was involved in multiple lawsuits that Lemie settled
Oh, no.
without telling the other partners.
What? That's a huge red flag.
Yeah, settling legal stuff without informing your co-owners is a big problem.
It is. And it suggests that he was making decisions without their consent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then he brings up these stories from other people who have allegedly had similar issues with Lemie and Zeus.
Like who?
He mentions women on TikTok and Ray J.
Oh, wow. So this might not be an isolated incident?
Right. It points to a potential pattern of behavior.
Definitely.
And Destorm says things escalated even further.
How so?
He claims Lemie started using intimidation tactics, referencing the company's supposed billion-dollar valuation.
Oh, God.
And basically telling them they couldn't win against the machine.
So using their power to silence them.
Yeah, and Destorm says he spent over $1 million on legal fees just to fight this.
Wow, that's insane.
It is. And then he makes this really disturbing allegation.
Oh, no.
He says that the final straw was when a mutual friend who used to be Lemmie's assistant told them that Lemie had sexually assaulted her.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, this is a very serious accusation.
It is, and it could explain why everything fell apart so dramatically.
For sure. But it's important to remember that this is still just an allegation.
Absolutely.
So now let's talk about Lemmie's response.
Okay.
It's been pretty limited so far.
Yeah, what has he said?
He posted this kind of rambling response on Instagram, promising to address Destorm's lies soon.
Oh.
But he also used the opportunity to promote his show, Smile LA.
Oh, wow.
And mentioned some ongoing legal stuff talking about a court SLT trial.
So he's denying the claims and hinting at legal action.
Yeah, pretty standard response in a situation like this.
It is.
Although promoting his show while all this is going on seems a bit incensed.
It does. Especially given the seriousness of the accusations.
Right.
So what did the Sweet May for Life host have to say about all this?
Well, they had some interesting observations about Lemie.
Like what?
They said he gave off this Diddy vibe.
Okay.
And that he seemed to really crave attention.
Interesting.
And they questioned why he needed this huge security detail everywhere he went.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And they also speculated that Lemie might try to drag out the legal process or just settle to make it all go away.
So classic legal tactics.
Yeah.
And they talked about the ethical side of all this too.
They did.
Which is important.
It is.
Because this whole situation really raises questions about how business is conducted in the digital world.
Right. Like what happens when a venture becomes super successful?
Right.
What responsibilities do the leaders have to the people who help them get there?
Exactly.
Okay, so we've also got this excerpt from an interview with Lemie.
Gotcha.
Where he talks about the Zeus Network's subscription model.
Okay.
It's $4.99 a month or $49.99 for a whole year. And he brags about having over 1 million subscribers.
Wow, so they're doing really well.
Yeah, and he mentions wanting to build $1 billion company and says he's already getting offers to buy Zeus.
So he's achieved massive financial success.
Yeah, which makes the allegations about unpaid partners even more shocking.
It does.
But here's the thing.
What?
He initially says that he funded the network all by himself.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But then later he acknowledges that Destorm, King Bach, and Amanda were involved from the start.
Ugh.
And says that he gave them equity for their influence.
Interesting. So his story's changing a bit.
Yeah, it seems like he's trying to revise the narrative now that all this stuff is coming out.
Makes sense.
And he goes on to say that he's the majority owner and the main decision maker.
Okay.
And talks about being hesitant to sell the company and wanting to get advice.
Right.
But then he says something really crazy.
What's that?
He claims that Destorm, King Bach, and Amanda didn't put in any money and didn't do anything.
Oh, wow.
Which completely contradicts Destorm's account.
Who?
Destorm says he invested his own money.
Right.
And that all three of them put in a lot of work to build the network.
Exact.
So this really highlights the core conflict here.
Yeah, like Lemmie's downplaying everyone else's contributions.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to erase their role in the story.
Which is a big problem.
So basically, we've got this huge mess.
We do.
With completely different accounts of how Zeus was created, who owned what, and whether any of the financial promises were actually kept.
And it leaves us with some really big questions.
It does. Like, who really built Zeus?
Right.
And were those initial agreements honored?
Exactly. And was everyone treated fairly?
Yeah. And it makes you think about the bigger picture, too. Like the ethics of the digital media world.
Right.
And the responsibilities that come with success.
It's a good point. Like, in this world of influencer partnerships, what does true collaboration look like?
Yeah. And what does fair compensation actually mean?
And what happens when those in power start taking advantage of the people who help them get there?
Exactly. So we want you to think about all of this.
Yeah. Definitely.
Consider these different perspectives.
And maybe do some more research on your own.
Yeah, and form your own conclusions about this whole Zeus Network saga.
It's a fascinating story.
It is. And it's still unfolding.
Definitely a lot more to come on this one.
Oh, yeah, for sure.